just want someone to hold.
Ready, Steady, Go really was the most innovative rock and roll show probably ever.
Ready, Steady, Go defined the 60s, almost as much as, say, the Beatles did.
It wasn't just the music, it was everything that affected youth, including sort of clothes, hair, makeup, and all that sort of stuff as well.
And the attitude of it just had a bit more fun and edge to it than anything it had before.
Dusty, I want to ask you a straight question.
It broke all the rules of television for young people.
I have fond memories of Ready, Steady, Go.
Martha and the Vandellas.
That was a big time.
Just to be on a hot new TV show.
The Supreme!
Was like, hey, we made it.
Jerry and the Pacemakers.
It was great. Felt like a star.
Ready, Steady, Go came about through Elkin Allen, who was head of the entertainment division at Rediffusion. I was out of work, I was broke, I had come from BBC Radio and wanted to get into television. A friend of mine was going out with Elkin Allen, introduced me to Elkin, and Elkin took a shot on myself and several young people and gave us the show. And Ready, Steady, Go came from that. I hadn't a clue. I mean, he said, okay, book the first show. We need the Beatles, we need the... Okay, who the hell are the Beatles and how do I find them?
The boys show the press their latest present. They're a natural, these fabulous four, bubbling over with fun, getting as much kick out of entertaining as the fans get from them.
1963, which is just as the Beatles happened, and so the whole wave of the youth revolution, I mean, the timing was perfect.
The pill had come along in '61, I think. So you had birth control. And so there was a new world which the rock and rollers were writing about. And so that was also encouraging the kids to find for themselves what might make them happy in the world, as opposed to getting stuck like the generation behind them had because of war, because of privation, because of lack of opportunity.
It was the big British R&B boom, so there was a lot of real cool, hit-making, trendy bands like The Who.
We had The Who, The Animals, The Kinks, who were just starting. So, you know, they were probably on their first or second single at the most.
Vicky Wickham said, you know, after you've done this, you're going to be #1 next week. I said, unbelievable, I couldn't believe that. Next week we were. It had that much power and was a stunning piece of TV.
Yeah, it was worth watching.
It was a whole sort of world that was exploding, and it's great that that programme sort of managed to capture both the artists and the atmosphere of the time.
In its early days, Ready, Steady, Go was in the basement of some building at the bottom of Kingsway, I think it was.
The Rediffusion building in Kingsway was quite a substantial building, a big television HQ, if you like.
We had no choice. There was one studio available at Rediffusion in the basement. And in the daytime or other times, it had Muriel Young, who did children's programs.
5 o'clock club. 5 o'clock club.
Ollie, we know that. Let's see it work.
I fixed it. Right, Fred. Switch on. Right.
And then there was Ready, Steady, Go. So we had no choice but to use the studio. It was very small.
It could have been done anywhere. It could have been done in an underground car park. It felt a bit like that.
Well, hi there. This is Keith Fordyce welcoming you to a very special edition of Ready, Steady, Go. For those of you who don't know this show, I might say that each week we invite all sorts of pop singers along here to Studio 9 in Kingsway, London, and the crowd who come in get a chance to meet their stars close to.
The atmosphere in the studio was so lively and so natural.
It was very buzzy, very active, and there was a gantry.
Dusty Springfield.
It was shot all over.
Every day I have to cry some. Every day I have to cry some. Dry the water from my eyes some. Every day I have to cry.
And sometimes they would get people to come down the stairs.
You know you make me wanna shout. Look my hands jumping, look my heart bumping, throw my head back. Come on now, don't forget to say you will.
I would say the whole studio was used.
Baby, I need your loving. I really need you. Although you're never near, I really need you. Your voice I often hear.
There were lots of music shows on TV before Ready, Steady, Go, but they grew out of light entertainment.
Just in time, you found me just in time.
And they tended to be very acceptable for adults as well.
There had been shows like Thank You Lucky Stars.
When the night is cold and my arms want someone to hold, I think of you.
That felt like an old-fashioned variety show being brought up to date.
Audiences in television before Ready, Steady, Go were often treated as kind of props, really.
I love you. Yes, I do. Yes, I do. I love you. Baby, I really love you. If you break, and if you break my heart, I'll die.
They were there to make some noise and occasionally for the cameras to turn around and take a shot of. Ready, Steady, Go, of course, completely broke the mould when it came to that style of television.
You pass me by. Well, you made me sigh. Oh, why? Oh, why? Oh, why?
It felt very dangerous because the audience were all around. They were part of the show, an important part of the show as well.
That's what frightened me when I first walked in and saw the place. Then the kids all started coming in. And I said, where did they go? He said, in front of you. I said, are they close? He said, why? I said, well, I don't want to be pulled off stage. And he said, oh, shut up.
We could stand right next to the platforms. We could go anywhere we wanted in the studio. So we tended to chase the platforms around as they were moving. Our friends could see us. Sometimes we do a little, little wave. Here I am on Ready, Steady, Go. You could actually touch the pop stars. So for a 14-year-old girl, that was the most exciting thing that could ever happen in your life.
I was sitting at the Hammond organ, concentrating on playing and singing, as were all the musicians in the band. We were happy doing it, and we were happy being part of what was happening. And the punters were happy being part of what was happening with the music.
Because it was all mind. So you didn't have to worry about singing properly, just remember the words. And it was great fun.
So ferry, cross the Mersey, 'cause this land's the place I love, and here I'll stay. People, they rush everywhere.
Don't forget, don't look at the camera. Look at the kids. Get on with the song. Forget you're on telly. We said, okay. All through the song, oh, everybody looking at the camera. Fred on drums with me. Look at me.
So ferry, cross the Mersey, and always take me
there, the place I love. People around every corner.
It was something that you accepted and you thought, this is really the only way to do it. If you want to get a perfect sound like the record, that's the way to do it.
Just a little rain, just a little rain. What have they done to the rain? Just a little boy standing in the rain.
One of the things that was amazing about it was the fact that the cameras were among the audience.
Because my babies got so.
Nobody said, let's put the cameras in the picture. They just happened to be in the picture because there was no way to avoid it.
The cameras come right past, and they were big, big cameras, quite scary.
They were like Daleks.
There were times when one had to go, oh, because a camera came scudding past, you know.
But again, it was great because it added a flavour to it.
Hi there, this is Ready, Steady, Go. I'm sorry I wasn't with you last week. I missed being with you, and my thanks to Clive Goodwin for standing in.
At the very beginning, the presenter was Keith Fordyce, who was solid, a professional.
Now, our amateur disc jockey this week is John Lennon.
Now, Keith was a lovely man, but we always thought he was kind of ancient. He was from another generation, you know.
But just before we talk about disc jockeying and records that you like, John, what about books?
What about them?
Well, you've just written one, haven't you?
Well, it just so happens to have. It's at 9 and 6, Keith, and it'll be out on Tuesday or Wednesday.
Keith was kind of a seasoned presenter person who was very kind of shirt and tie. He could have been reading the news.
Are you going to go on being an amiable goon, or are you going to be a star?
I don't know.
A big, big star.
Probably be an amiable goon, I hope.
We had several presenters. Somebody called Michael Aldred was excellent because he knew music.
Oh, you suddenly knocked yourself out, don't you, Millie?
Yes, I do.
Are you really only 15?
Yes, I'm only 15.
How long have you been singing?
Since I was 3.
But he just wasn't, he had no charisma in front of the camera. And we advertised for a presenter, and Kathy McGowan came in.
It's not just because our next group are really great friends of mine, or because they're over there listening to what I'm saying, but I really do think they're absolutely fantastic. And here with Off the Hook are the Rolling Stones.
She came over as a real person, and that's really what the show was about real people and a way of life.
She was Ready, Steady, Go. She loved music too. But I think, honestly, what her attraction was she wasn't terribly good at being a compere.
I'm going to leave you in the tender care of Kathy, OK? Have a chat.
Yeah. Hello.
Hello, Paul. What can I ask you?
Then everything was, you know, speak proper English. All your bulletins, all your news, everybody spoke the Queen's English.
This is London Calling. Here is the news read by Derek Baker.
She was your everyday girl.
I remember looking at it and thinking that you know, Kathy McGowan was very sort of beautiful and elegant and was the sort of person that I'd like to be my friend. Although I was only probably sort of 6 or something, but I still could sort of see the point of that. And Keith Fordyce was a sort of senior, more responsible figure that probably had a car, and I rather identified with that as well.
Which one have you picked?
Number 2.
Number 2 is the winner! Here we are, give her the prize. Well done, Susan. And a kiss, too, I ask you. Right, you've got work to do, Lionel. You move that way.
There's a real attraction to live shows. And in a way, each week something went wrong. But of course, that was the attraction. You know, somebody was introduced and they didn't come straight on, or somebody like Solomon Burke fell off the chair. You know, I mean, there was always something, and you couldn't redo it because it was live.
Right, well, there's Ringo. I bet he's with Kathy. Where are you?
Ringo, you can sign the record later on. How's the new film going?
I do know one story, though. Sandy Shaw, she was in the dressing room, and we'd put her name on the bottom, Sandy Shaw, and then we tilted up from the to her face, empty frame, and there was Burt Bacharach doing this, looking around, thinking, and he just made the whole thing work musically They kept repeating it, but no, we did the entire number without Sandy Shaw. And then everybody said, well, where was she? And she was in her dressing room, watching the show live, going out, and no Sandy Shaw. She said, well, nobody called me.
Don't be late.
I'm afraid it was. Yes, there was so much happening backstage. I got kind of involved in that.
Try singing it, Sandy.
The obvious effect of Ready, Steady, Go on the culture of Britain is the fashion, because you had Kathy.
These boots are made for walking, and that's just what they'll do. One of these days, these boots are gonna walk all over you.
Kathy was so perfect for the show. First off, the look. She was a mod.
She was the epitome of a mod girl. And that was when the mod movement was coming to the fore.
Do you think you're a mod? Do you know what a mod is, Ringo?
No, I'm not a mod. Or a rocker.
You're nothing.
No. I'm a mocker.
The women were very straight-laced.
They weren't overtly sexy, and they weren't like low necks or anything like that. It'd be kind of probably quite high neck, but short skirt. Very demure.
But Kathy always looked amazing.
I can feel a new expression on my face. I can feel a glowing sensation taking place. I can hear the guitars play lovely tunes every time that you walk in the room.
She just had the fashion nailed down. She wore a lot of Barbara Halaniki clothes, Mary Quant.
Kathy McGowan, along with Twiggy, was one of the faces of the 60s. I mean, she looked like a supermodel. She's got such a strong look in the same way that Twiggy has, but the opposite. You know, Twiggy was kind of short and blonde hair, and Kathy McGowan was this, you know, gorgeous kind of almost Cleopatra kind of look.
Kathy was the first name that I knew that had started like a fashion line.
Kathy McGowan of Ready, Steady, Go fame has designed her first collection for this show. This attractive TV star is a girl of many talents. The next creation was displayed by Kathy McGowan herself. A Tattersall check woolen shirt dress.
Women were driving British street fashion in the way that, you know, we'd always looked to Paris before that. It was reflecting this big fashion revolution. And it meant that girls could buy high street clothes and look like Kathy McGowan.
I always wanted to wear what she was wearing or try and find a similar outfit, which for a 14-year-old girl, you know, was something to have those clothes.
Every television set seemed to be on in England. Anybody who had a television set would watch Ready, Steady, Go. Me included. I would rush home from work, hoping that I wouldn't miss anything.
Life was sort of simpler, and people would go home to their tea to home and would sit down and have their tea at 6:30, so they'd all sit and watch our show. And that's what happened all over the country.
Because everybody used to watch it, especially the kids who bought the records.
We were all in love with the pop stars and music and fashion and dancing. It opened parents' eyes to you know, what their kids were all about and music was all about.
Even my stepfather used to say, bloody rubbish, absolutely disgusting. My mother said he'd sit there glued to the screen shouting at it, Mick Jagger's dreadful. And so it was a national thing.
We didn't have a television, but my neighbours did. And so we'd go in and watch that. At the time, it seemed risque and daring because you were seeing the cameras and and you didn't quite know what was going to happen.
Well, don't forget our great big date. Oh, good evening, sir. We'll see you later. Thank you very much.
I think it was the first kind of television show from that era that actually depicted what it was actually like playing in the clubs, which was all the go at the time. You know, we were all playing live in clubs.
My baby found your place to go, hangs around town at the club of go-go.
There were so many clubs. You could go from one club to another. If you didn't like what they were playing in one, you just walked to another one. I mean, it was absolutely brilliant.
It was kind of the first really massive homegrown British youth cult.
And the atmosphere was one of kind of hedonism, of pleasure, of looking for a good time. It was a time when youth was celebrated and celebrating itself in a way.
He's a big shot at the club of go-go.
Vicky Wickham, the producer of the show, she would come down and hear the band and say, well, we must get this band on Ready, Steady, Go, because they're good, you know.
Vicky was like the gatekeeper. And if Vicky didn't want something, it wasn't going to happen.
What was good, in those days, the business was really small, so everybody knew everybody. And we all would, you know, knew to go whichever the club was happening at the moment.
So for us, it was like a great opportunity for us to get our name known. We didn't have any hit records at that time, you know, but we were in the band.
This is a man's world, but it would have been nothing without a woman or a girl.
We did Ready, Steady, Go, and we built our name up to become nationwide, you know.
It's a man's world. Yes, it is. It's a man's world.
We did have a vision of what worked and what Ready, Steady, Go was in terms of the people we booked, because we didn't necessarily book a band because it was in the charts.
We argued amongst ourselves sometimes, particularly Michael and I. He threw a clipboard at me once. But, you know, we just between us would be able to book who we wanted, when we wanted.
Hundreds of the withered generation flock to the West End on the opening night of a new kind of club. It has music, but so have hundreds of other places, though here it's provided by the Animals. Let's listen. Explanation later.
Vicky is very open and very much a fan of all of the acts that were there, and you knew that.
It's called Baby Let Me Take You Home, and here are the Animals.
Visits to Ready, Steady, Go to do a show was like going home. In the band that I was in, we were such Tyneside scruffs, you know. For instance, Hilton Valentine would look forward to doing Ready, Steady, Go because he could use the shower. Yeah, there's a shower there, man.
How come the name like the Animals? Where do you get that from?
Well, we look like animals, I think.
Vicky Wickham had a love of American music, and she was instrumental in bringing all these acts onto Ready, Steady, Go.
Here they are with their big hit number, I Get Around, the Beach Boys.
You know, so we had people on like the Beach Boys. I thought, well, that's not our kind of music. But in fact, it was, because it was another movement which she had spotted who they should have on the show.
The show was very savvy with having a lot of black acts on for the first time on British TV, and that's what the British R&B boom bands were copying.
Mary Mac, dressed in black, silver buttons all down her back. High low, tips and toe. She broke a needle and she can't sew. Walk in the dark.
They all had been influenced early on by American musicians and artists. And so again, Ready, Steady, Go, we had a lot of the great American, and particularly the black American acts.
The music we were playing was American, you know. And the clientele at the Flamingo was basically black American GIs stationed in the US Air Force in London. So that was the culture that we were deeply involved in. That's where Ready, Steady, Go flourished, really.
I started booking a lot of the black artists through Dusty, because she would go to America, call me up. In those days, it was expensive to make phone calls, but she would call up and play me a record down the phone, and I'd get, oh my God, that's brilliant.
Obviously, Dusty had a big influence because of her wonderful voice, but also her world of soul music. She brought that to Ready, Steady, Go as well.
Everyone loved Dusty because she was a very wonderful, sweet girl, but she also was a girl who spoke her mind, and she was very much into the black culture.
Dusty was really, really important to the show. Her stamp was on Ready, Steady, Go.
She loved the Vandellas, Martha and the Vandellas.
We became sisters. She was the first person that I let hear dancing in the street, because we carried around our own little reel tape recorders, and I was able to take a demo and actually see what she thought of it.
The recruiting of dancers for the show, who were actually the audience, that was the most incredible thing, really, because we went into clubs, like the Scene Club was the one where all the kids danced.
Kathy, myself, Michael, various people would go around the clubs, and we would pick people that looked great.
They told me that the Ready, Steady, Go people were coming down, so don't, you know, make sure you're here. And I walked into the club, pushed the door open, and it was heaving. It was just the sweat was coming off the ceiling. Somehow everybody had found out that Ready, Steady, Go were going to be there, and you couldn't move. And I just thought, well, I haven't got a hope in hell.
Then if we liked what we saw, we'd tap them on the shoulder, and then they'd get the golden ticket to be on the show.
And the next thing, somebody tapped me on the shoulder, and it was somebody from Ready, Steady, Go, and they gave me a little card.
Now it's my great pleasure to introduce to you Britain's two top young dancers, Patrick Carr and Teresa Comfrey.
Patrick and Teresa would introduce a new dance every week.
There is a boy I'm crazy about, won't even look my way.
And they had names like the mashed potato and the block and obviously the hitchhiker.
Gonna make it mine, gonna tell it not a lie.
There was just so many of them. I mean, they were 5-minute wonders.
We learned all these dances. They were very simple, really. They were the sort of dances that the audience could do.
To get onto the show, there was a huge competition. Thousands of us lined up, queued up. It was Kingsway in Holborn, all the way around the block. I mean, God knows how many there were. And then we were herded into the studio, sort of maybe 100 of us at a time. And then there was another audition, And so they narrowed it down after thousands of kids to probably about 50, and we got passes to come every week to the show.
Now it's mime time. We've got 4 girls picked out an audition earlier in the week who are going to mime to a Brenda Leaders.
I was then approached by somebody, would I like to enter the mime competition? And I said, oh, yes. I mean, why wouldn't you? And it'll be the Beatles, the week the Beatles are on, which, oh, my God, how heaven.
And we have a judge to pick out the best of the 4 when they've done it, the judge being Mr. Paul McCartney. Good evening. You're keen on budding Brenda Lees, are you?
Oh, yes.
I'll bet you are, yes. Right.
I had thought that because the week before, the girl that won the mime competition got to go out with whoever the particular pop star was, who I can't remember, I thought I was going to go out with the Beatles after the show.
Ready, Paul? OK, off we go with Let's Jump the Broomstick.
It was very exciting to be on the show that week because we got there at 8:30 in the morning. It went live at 6, and so we spent the whole day with the Beatles.
Number 4.
Number 4, Melanie Coe. Here's the prize, Melanie, the LP from Paul, and all our congratulations. Very well done.
I was like a star when I walked into school. They all gathered round my desk, girls that I knew hated me previously, and they wanted my autograph. So I was very happy to give them all my autograph, you know. And a couple of them came in with photographs of the Beatles. And one girl I remember came in with the album and wanted me to sign the album. So it was, yeah, it was great.
We had to close down Kingsway, had to get a lot of police. It was mob scene. It was phenomenal. And when the lads came, they jumped out of their car, and again, the police had to get them in. But what was lovely was, once they were in, and, you know, we started working, etc., they were just the same.
Went into the studio, which was, and I looked from the gantry, because you look down, I thought, oh, they're the Beatles. And I said, oh, God, they're fantastic.
George, can we hear your latest record now, please?
No. Yes, certainly, you can hear it, and it's called Can't Buy Me Love, and on Parlophone, and it's 6 and 9.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Very
you.
good value, George.
They look, well, I mean, obviously the Beatles were not launched by Ready, Steady, Go, but they, I mean, everyone wants to be on, and people would just turn up. It was like a club.
Artists, managers, just people in the record business wanted to come, see the show, and we had this wonderful room called the Green Room.
Come on, everybody, let's twist. Hey, hey, come on, everybody, let's twist.
The Green Room was as small as this area here.
You were supposed to have one drink. Somebody called Isabel Davy ran it like a schoolmistress. And so at the beginning, she could control people having one drink. She gave up.
Drinks started probably before the show, and there was as much as you wanted to drink there. So it was stars that had come off, they'd come into the Green Room, they'd all have to drink more and more drinks, and I'd be there, and everybody would be drinking heavily. Terrific atmosphere in there. Peter Blake, and then I think Hockney was there, I'm pretty sure. But almost everybody who was in the scene in London would come to this show.
Everybody would just come, hang out, watch the show, chat, catch up.
The odd Rolling Stone would come, maybe not all of them.
It was a scene. It was a Friday night scene.
What you would get on Ready, Steady, Go with the people watching you, and you're in the charts, you wanted to be number one.
While your mind's not gone, if the county's for me, hear the shackles on, baby, please don't go.
You know, so what you need is to get your record heard, because we had no Radio 1, we had no real pop radio. How else are you going to get records heard?
And Ready, Steady, Go really helped the record in the charts. And you'd even get a few quid extra.
The BBC entertainment department, I'm told at the time, were very jealous of the audiences that Ready, Steady, Go was getting. So they saw Ready, Steady, Go and said, right, we've got to have some of that.
This is BBC One.
When Top of the Pops started, I was pissed because they had the obvious formula.
Yes, it's number one. It's Top of the Pops.
The only difference was that the BBC jumped on the then embryonic singles chart to make as a format for the show.
That's why I was pissed, because I knew that Top of the Pops had a formula that was going to knock us off at some point.
Little children, you better tell what you see.
Top of the Pops was kind of much more staged. I think they tried to make it a bit more hip, a bit more like Ready, Steady, Go, but it was very different.
I preferred Ready, Steady, Go to every other music or similar programme, then and ever after.
We moved to Wembley because we needed more space and we needed to be set up properly. You know, in terms of the space and the studio, fabulous, absolutely fabulous.
30 feet of clear height before you reach the lights. Enough for a bird's eye view of Baghdad, if you want to stage a story from an Arabian Night.
Ready, Steady, Go was a 99% mind show for the first 63, 64. And then when I came on it in 65, we were the first show to go live. We very much were designing it for the sound guys who were really going to the moon, as it were, because they'd never done live rock and roll before.
Television shows usually were really bad sound, especially for music. And my memory goes back now that Michael Hogg in the control room and Vicky and the team of Ready, Steady, Go made efforts to actually make the sound of the music good.
I'll buy a Chevrolet, buy a Chevrolet. I'll buy you a Chevrolet. Just give me some of your love. Just give me some of your love.
Michael came to it fresh, dying to try new things. Not that he knew what the old things were, but did it, you know, very differently, shot it in a very contemporary way.
A lot of the guys who were my cameramen were from outside broadcasts, because some of the guys, the camera crews who were used to working in the studio, were more rigid. What I wanted was for the camera to be part of the music more than just watching the music.
I can go any way. We are two. I can live anyhow. We'll all live.
For example, when The Who did Anyhow, Anytime, Anywhere, there's a bit where Roger is smashing his mic onto part of Keith's drum kit. and the camera shakes as violently as what Roger is doing. I had the idea the camera operator just shakes his camera, you know, like that. It's a very interesting version of that song. You don't forget it.
And of course, the artists loved Michael. I mean, they talked the same language. I mean, nobody had ever talked to them before. I mean, Mick Jagger totally fell in love with them because nobody had said to him, work to this camera, do this, turn around, I'm going to do this, you know. And I think it was great for the artists.
The dogs begin to bark. Hounds begin to howl.
He's an extraordinary performing. He knows how to do it. It's instinctive. It's calculated, but instinctive at the same time. I realized that he was a performing artist, the equivalent of Laurence Olivier or Rudolf Nureyev or anyone like that, an extraordinary kid.
The audience, particularly the girls, of course, wanted to get to Mick. And the first time it happened, we all went, oh my God. And luckily we had a stage manager, Roy
Fewens, who was somewhat older than we were. He probably was then in his 40s. He'd come from the theater, and he knew what helped to make exciting television. And so at the end of the Rolling Stones, his arms, which were holding back the crowd, maybe dropped just a little bit. And so kids got on stage, got near Mick and Keith and kissed them and hugged them and knocked them down on the ground. But it made good television, and no animals were hurt in the making of this good television.
Michael's studio direction on Ready, Steady, Go really did what it had to do, and that is dismantle the traditional form of television direction, which is wide shot, isn't that nice, and then maybe a close-up, and then go back to a mid-shot and back to a wide shot. Ready, Steady, Go was close-up, close-up, close-up from all sorts of different angles.
Thank you. We'd like to do one called Paint It Black.
When I heard Paint It Black, I knew what I could do.
I see a red door and I want it painted black. No colors anymore, I want them to turn black.
I came up with this idea that what Mick should do is take the lights out in the studio. So I called him up and I said, here's what I'm thinking. Think of it like you are Lucifer. And every time you put your arms up at the end of a verse, we'll take out a bank of lights. And then it'll end up just with a spotlight on you in the black. He liked that also. And so that's what happened. I got a zoom extender put on one of the cameras. The zoom extender was a little device on the end of the zoom lens, which when it was flicked down, the images of Mick were juddering. And that was a really unusual effect. And also the thing to remember is it was all done live. I kept shouting from the control room when the zoom was going, kill him, kill him, kill him, kill him, meaning driving the cameraman to get harder and harder in the shot.
Dusty Springfield, and I had gone to see Motown live at a theatre, and there was no audience. Nobody knew about them, and it was so sad because it was a great show.
For some reason, they weren't selling tickets, and I think Arthur Howes was the promoter, and we were asked if we could do the tour with them to help sell the bloody tickets. It's unbelievable, because the Supremes had already had a couple of hits.
Because the tour was so successful in the States, and Motown wanted to sort of, as a record company, Motown wanted to open up the market for all the other artists.
The Motown organization called that tour the Ghost Tour, because the first houses were absolutely empty. But it was one of the best tours I've ever done in my life. It was fantastic. We all became great friends.
Dusty said to me, you know, they should be on television. People need to see them. If they see and hear them, they're going to love them. Why don't you talk to Elkin? I said, okay. I said, but you know, would you be part of it? Would you host it? Because we're going to need somebody, and obviously you're a good bet. Yes, I will.
And Vicki and Dusty really put together a show separate to Ready, Steady, Go called The Sound of Motown.
Dusty Springfield, and now, the Supremes.
To be on a program like Ready, Steady, Go was actually very exciting, because that was when we had our first #1 record.
And Vicki getting people like that sensational. We'd never seen anything like the Supremes, and they were amazing performers.
And he's still only 15. Here with his great new record, Kiss Me Baby, it's Stevie Wonder!
Oh, kiss me, baby. Oh, sugar kisses.
Stevie Wonder, or Little Stevie Wonder, as he was called. We had never seen people like this before.
Oh, kiss me, baby. Sugar kisses. I get my love in a heart. I get my like it. You know you make me say,
the sound was so good. Stevie Wonder was perfect.
And having people like Stevie Wonder on was incredible. You know, it's the first show that would have done that.
When Barry Gordy got wind of us coming to England to do a wonderful show like Ready, Steady, Go, he said the whole crew is going. And that was my first occasion to play with the recording musicians. He didn't let them travel. They just stayed in the studio and recorded 24 hours a day. He sent Earl Van Dyke's quintet with us, and we got a chance to work with the fabulous Funk Brothers.
And Dusty did Wishing and Hoping with Martha and the Vandellas, which still is magic. You can hear Martha and her laughing in the song. I mean, they were enjoying it.
We knew we could blend our voices because we'd been singing together anyway. And I think it was a very good blend. It was a highlight of that show, I think. And I'll always remember us strutting and singing that song. I've got the video, and I visit it often.
Yeah!
And the show was, of course, magnificent. Well, Berry Gordy, to this day, says, thank you. You know, you introduced Motown. I mean, no thank you, we just wanted to. It was great.
You know, I love Motown music, but I hadn't realised that the people were any different. They might as well have been from Liverpool. I didn't know that they were from Detroit and that was a different place. So I think that that was a great thing, letting suburban Britain know how great all this music was that was happening.
I'd seen James Brown at the Apollo, and his performance was absolutely amazing. So I was talking to Michael about this, and he said, we've got to have him. So he was coming over, so we booked him.
We built him a really big set because of his dancing and his movement. I mean, he needed space. Anyway, James Brown comes out at 4 o'clock and is surprised because there's a 25-foot stage for him. He said, oh, you've done this for me? I said, yeah, you know, we did our homework. And already he felt that there was respect for him as an artist.
And it was an incredible, incredible show.
A lot of the shows were wiped because the television company then, Rediffusion, thought that rock and roll was kind of like a fad, like the hula hoop. But James Brown was sensational, because that was a great show, which got wiped. Thank you, Rediffusion. Afterwards, he came up in the bar and he said to me, he said, you've got soul as a director.
So nice, I got you.
So, you know, that's my badge. James Brown said I had soul.
But there was a downside. We got a lot of phone calls saying no, and I could use much stronger language, but, you know, a lot of people really didn't react well.
Half the television sets in the UK had been turned off or turned over, and there was some very unflattering comments in the press.
I feel nice.
That's how it was.
We often heard, oh, we don't have any racial problems here, which, you know, we could see it was not true because most people were white. You didn't have a lot of people on TV, black people on TV. So we said to ourselves, well, they don't think they have any problems, but they do.
When I start losing interest in my showing at the movies and I don't want to go to the
I was singing in the Flamingo Club one night, and I went back in my dressing room. Somebody came in and just said to me, did you see the black guy sitting in the front listening to you? And I said, yeah. He said, well, that was Otis Redding. I said, oh, don't be silly, Otis Redding. Was he sitting there watching me? You've got to be joking. Anyway, I went in the dressing room, knocked on the door, and Otis Redding walked in, you know. So I sort of looked up and went, bloody hell. And he said, I'm doing a TV show. And he said, I want you to be my special guest. I said, I've got to pinch myself here. I think I'm dreaming this, you know.
He was a sweetheart. He was like a teddy bear. Just one of the nicest guys you could ever meet.
Mr. Eric Barton.
When they picked Chris Farlow and myself to perform with Otis Redding, I mean, it was just love, 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 you know.
Put your hands on your hip, girl, and let your backbone slip. If you do it right, yeah. Lord, we're gonna shake tonight, yeah. Make your body move the light, just shake.
Chris Farlow was always one of my favorite artists. To share the stage with Otis was such a thrill.
And it's fantastic. Even now, I mean, you don't get tired of looking at it, you know.
The show wasn't rehearsed at all. We would just give them bits of music where we knew that we would be dancing, because obviously it was about Otis and the band. And I mean, what an amazing guy. And he was so handsome, and he had a voice like honey.
On a cloudy day, but it's cold outside, and I've got the month of May.
I felt incredibly lucky, and I was incredibly lucky. My star was shining above my head when, you know, that whole thing happened. I hadn't trained to dance, I just loved dancing, and I was given an opportunity, and I grabbed it with both hands.
With your long blonde hair and your eyes of blue, the only thing I ever get from you is sorrow.
Yeah, it was a bit sad, really, yeah. Yeah. We wanted it to go on. I don't know why it closed down. I don't know why.
Ready Steady finished because our ratings were bad. You know, we were losing out to other people.
I think Top of the Pops probably helped to kill off Ready, Steady, Go because it was regular, it was on BBC One, it was prime time, and it was based on the singles chart.
They took over from us. They had the ratings, they had the following. Yes, and I think eventually it knocked us off.
I think the other thing that added to the demise of Ready, Steady, Go was the fact that it had specialised in those British early R&B bands. They were less popular and people had moved on to, you know, psychedelia and to West Coast Americana and all sorts of different music.
What did you do there? I got high. What did you feel there?
We didn't rely on chart people. We relied on different people that were coming over, which from America, that nobody's seen before. In retrospect, not a good formula. I mean, we were really kind of self-indulgent, which we didn't realize either.
I think, insofar as Ready, Steady, Go has a legacy and has a life 50 years later, it's to show people what a time of exuberance and hope and passion of all kinds was like.
It was all just a wonderful experience. It was almost like going to Disneyland. It was wonderful.
Ready, Steady, Go was one of those magical experiences that only happens once in a lifetime, in a way.
To be involved with that I felt very fortunate to be included.
It's disappointing, but we'd had a good run.
It was really like being part of a wonderfully kind of rambunctious family.
So long.